What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Tuesday Live. Today, we're continuing our discussion from the other week of what makes an intermediate guitarist, or how to go from beginner to intermediate. And I thought it might be cool to talk about what makes a pro, quote-unquote, guitar player. Now, before we jump in to this, a couple of quick announcements. As always, we are running a few sales. What we're going to talk about today, all the techniques and skills and things that I think most professionals should have a firm grasp of. I've made some video courses on, specifically the Nashville Number System course and Fretboard Fundamentals, and both of those are on sale. So if you're watching the stream live, we have 10 coupons for 50% off either one of those courses. There's 10 each. Once those are gone, they're gone. And after that, we're running 35% off both of those courses. So Fretboard Fundamentals and Nashville Number System. So yeah, that's flying by. Link is in the description box down below if you're watching this later, or in the chat. So what makes a pro guitarist? Oh, by the way, as always, I'm joined by producer Chris.
As always, hey guys.
Just a disembodied voice
pressing
on
all the
live
buttons
stream.
and stuff.
Assistant producer Chris. He's running the live stream, so I don't have to. Thank
Graduated
God.
from jazz school, no longer.
Listen, these are the skills they don't teach you in jazz school, but maybe they should.
They didn't teach me how to press any buttons.
No, they didn't teach you how to run streaming software or how to edit videos, but here you are. So anyways, as always, let me know where you guys are watching from in the chat. And if you have questions, this is also a Q&A stream. So if you have questions, you can @ me at Rhett Shull in the chat. You can leave a super chat donation, all of which is greatly appreciated. So pro guitarist. I think the first thing we should do is qualify or define what a professional guitarist is, professional musician is. Now, keep in mind that everything I talk about today is from my perspective and my perception of other players around me. I've been playing full-time professionally since 2011, so a little over 10 years now, or close to whatever it is, 10 years. And to me, I consider anyone who's a professional to be someone who earns their living from playing their instrument. Now, if you think about it like that, it's not just touring or playing gigs or playing session work that makes someone a professional. Someone who teaches guitar lessons full time is a professional guitarist. Someone who has a church gig or two that keeps them fully employed, that's a professional guitarist. Someone who writes and scores film music or whatever it is. The point is that this tent is a big one, and it houses a lot of different people with a lot of different career paths and aspirations. It's not all just people on stage playing for huge artists or playing on sessions, although it does include that. With that said, though, over the last 10 years, I've gotten to know people, and I've had experiences as a pro, quote-unquote, guitar player. And I've noticed a few commonalities between just about everyone, no matter their skill level, no matter their experience level. I know people that have been playing and working for decades. Tim Pierce comes to mind. Tim Pierce has been a professional guitar player and professional session player longer than I've been alive. I know people that have been doing it 2 or 3 years. I know people like producer Chris, who just graduated from music school and is starting his first 2 years of his career as a guitarist. It's a broad perspective, a broad tent. But there's a few things that we're going to talk about here that I think are common between all pro guitar players. We're going to give some examples. We're going to answer some questions. Man, people from all over the place. This is awesome. Denmark, Oklahoma, Sacramento, Seattle. Yeah, Newport News. Right on. So first off, what makes a pro guitarist? I think, to me, the one common theme between everyone that I know is they all have a solid grasp of the fundamentals of their instrument, of music. Now, if we break that down a little further, to me, the first thing that comes to mind is triads, and knowing your triads and your chord shapes everywhere on the neck and being able to find that comfortably. Now, I talk about this in Fretboard Fundamentals, and I'm making a second course right now, the rhythm guitar course, that kind of takes a deeper dive into all that stuff. But essentially, I like to start off when it comes to learning triads or teaching triads. When I was a guitar teacher, I would start off with the caged system. Right? Most of us probably already have heard of the cage system or know the cage system, and I like to use it as a starting point to help people understand where to play their triads up and down the neck and where to find chords, and then use those triads and use those chord shapes to build on and create more complex chords, more interesting chords, or to utilize them in more musical ways than just playing the stock triad shapes. The point is, if you're going to be a professional, you need to know how to play just about any chord progression with any type of voicing that you might encounter in any register anywhere on the neck, because you're going to encounter situations where you're playing with other musicians, keys players, other guitar players. You need to know the chord progression of whatever song, whatever gig you're on, and be able to quickly and efficiently move it anywhere on the neck. Move it to a higher voicing for a different sound, a different tone, different timbre. Be able to change the voicing to complement what a singer might be doing or what a keys player might be doing. And all of that stuff, from my perspective, starts with understanding your triad shapes. We got any questions so far? Anyone? Bueller? So, if you're not familiar with the cage system, essentially a brief overview. And before we dive into this, I should add a disclaimer that the caged system is not the end all be all system for understanding chords, right? Some people give caged a bad name because sometimes it tends to be taught as you just need to learn this one thing and you'll understand everything you need to know about chords on the guitar, and that's just not true. It's a good jumping off point. It's a good way to get someone out of their open cowboy chord positions and playing these different chord voicings in different parts of the neck. That's the point of the cage system. So if you're not familiar, essentially, if we take a C triad, right, and this open voiced chord right here, that's C major, right? C, E, G, C, E. Well, that is a C major triad, right? Root, third, fifth, root. And anywhere I play those three notes, C, E, and G, anywhere on the neck is going to give me a C major triad. So I can play it here. 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 Those are all C majors, and all of those are going to work in different, they're going to work differently in different contexts. Now, if you notice there's my C shape, but what is that? That's a C major chord, but look at the voicing, look at the shape that I'm playing here. It looks an awful lot like an A major shape. If I were to act as if I was fretting the root note A, which is open in this position here. So that's where the A shape from the caged system comes. C shape, A shape, G shape. So start to understand that anytime I have my root note here, and then I play this chord voicing, I've got a major triad, right? So I've got C major, I've got root, fifth, root, major, third. And that works for all 12 keys. If I want to play E flat major, right there, root, fifth, root, major, third. Let's make that minor. Let's say I want to play E flat minor. Well, all I have to do is take that major third, drop it down a half step, so minor third. Same thing with C here, C major, C minor. So you start to do that with all of the different shapes. So there's my C shape. Let's take that C shape, for example, and let's use that shape to play an E flat major. It would look like this. My root note E flat is here, and then I've just got the major triad. Then the next step after that, after you've started to grasp not just the shapes and the voicings, but how to apply them in different parts of the neck, you start to realize that you don't actually have to play all of the chord. And this is another fundamental thing that most, if not all, pro guitar players that I've interacted with understand, that as a guitar player, in the context of a full band, for example, if I'm playing a chord progression, more than likely, if there's a bass player and there's a keys player or another guitar player, I don't need to play the entire chord. I don't need to go, sometimes that works, right? Sometimes you need the big, beefy, low E major chord. But more often than not, I find myself playing voicings like this. All all of that stuff is based around my triads and understanding where my triads are on the neck. And the way I got there was when I started to understand the caged system. If you're just joining us, everyone, we are running 50% off of Fretboard Fundamentals and the Nashville Number System course. We have a handful of those coupons left. So if you want to get 50% off of either one of those courses, if you're new to this stuff, what I'm talking about here, Fretboard Fundamentals is an entire video course that goes deep into all of this subject. And then Nashville Number System we're going to get to in a second. So once those are gone, once those 8 coupons are gone, then we'll be running 35% off. Cage is a good reference system, but knowing the notes of the chords you're playing is more valuable. I agree, and that's what I mean when I say that caged is not the end-all, be-all when it comes to understanding your chord voicings and understanding your notes and basically how to unlock the fretboard. It's a good starting point, and it's a good way to get you out of that initial open position that we all start learning in. But ideally, you would pair learning the cage system with these shapes with learning the intervals in the chords, as well as the note names. I would actually say that learning the intervals and the interval relationships in the chords is more important than learning the note names in the chord. Both are important, but I would say intervals are slightly more important. Will having a $4,000 Klon make you a pro? If you can find a Klon for $4,000 right now, then sure, you're a pro. Let's see here. Zach, I write almost all my lead lines from triads in whatever key we're in. And that's a really great point. It's not just chords. It's not just playing, simple chord progressions. You can use these triad shapes to write melody lines, to use as solo jumping off points for improvisation and soloing, knowing what intervals are in the chords, knowing the voicings, knowing the chord tones of the chords, and working around that. Is all super important stuff to know. And that's what I mean when pros, they have a solid grasp of the fundamentals. This is where becoming a great parts player, at least the type of stuff that I do. And I should point out that what I'm talking about here, again, it all comes from my perspective. And my perspective comes from, the type of gigs that I've done, the artists that I've played with, the records that I've played on, which are, I'm not a metal player. I'm not a prog player. I'm not a jazz musician. I'm not a gospel musician. My specialties are in the Americana, the rock, the country, the blues and soul kind of genre. That's where I live. And I started to figure out a couple years ago that those were my strengths and that's what I'm good at. Those are the sounds that I understand. Those are the records that I love. And so it makes sense that I work in those areas. That's another thing to point out is you don't have to master every single style or genre. When I got out of AIM 10 years ago, I used to beat myself up super hard because I wasn't I couldn't play Al Di Meola or Robin Ford, or I didn't spend all my time transcribing Charlie Parker solos, which I actually used to do for a little bit. But I realized that I was trying to spread myself way too thin, and the type of music that I was interested in and the type of gigs that I wanted to get didn't involve Charlie Parker solos. And that's not to say that you shouldn't learn that stuff. It's to say that you more than likely can't do everything really well. It's like the jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I made the decision to kind of focus on really learning a few styles and listening to a few styles of music and figuring out the tones and the parts and the feel behind a few styles of music that I really enjoyed. And it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah, I like this sentiment from Pete Breen in the chat. He says, bottom line, if you have to think before your hands are moving, it needs more work.
I would say so. And that's not to say that you can't play things that are musical while having to think. You can, but it is you want things to be second nature.
As far as the fundamentals.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So triads are really important. I would say your pentatonics, knowing your major and minor pentatonics really, really well, go hand in hand with the triads up and down the neck. I mean, we all know but But can you apply those licks and those shapes to different parts of the neck? Using pentatonics to write melodies and parts is a huge thing I do all the time. The record that we did in Germany, which I'm hoping will be out later this year. There's not an official release date on it. The artist is called Roofman, a friend of mine named Thijs from the Netherlands. And the music is, I'm really proud of what we did, but musically it's very simple. It's very straight ahead. There's not a lot of crazy changes. There's not a lot of improvisation. It's pretty meat and potatoes playing. But when you're playing in that kind of situation, it's all the more important to play the right part. When it's something simple and diatonic, it's sometimes more difficult to play something that is memorable and works for the song. And a lot of that comes from understanding your pentatonics, major and minor pentatonics, because a lot of vocal melodies are going to come from that scale. Understanding, how to work around, how to utilize the vocal melody in what you're playing. The next thing is the Nashville Number System, or just the number system. It has multiple names. And this is why I made a video course on this a year and a half ago, was because when I was in music school, we actually didn't spend a lot of time learning the number system. And that was one thing that when I got out and started playing gigs, I learned very quickly I needed to get in the shed and understand the Nashville Number System. It's very, very simple. And like I said, if you want to take the course I made on it, there's 50% off coupon in the description or in the chat here. But essentially what it is a way of communicating chord progressions between musicians, right? So let's take a chord progression in the key of D, right? Let's take D major. See here. Really simple progression, right? D major, G major, B minor, A minor. Let's put yourself in a position here. Let's say you're playing on a gig, right? And a song gets called and you don't know the song per se. You don't know the progression. And you look over at the bass player, and the bass player knows that you don't know the song, so he's just going to call the changes to you. But it's loud. You're in a bar, and he's on the other side of the stage, and there's music playing. It's loud. And all you can kind of see is what he's saying. And so all you hear him say is D, G, B minor, A. Well, if you can't quite hear what he's doing or see what he's doing, it's a really difficult way to try and communicate chord changes in just about any situation, because D sounds and looks like G, right? Sounds and looks like B, and it can be a huge mess. But if you understand the number system and he's like, oh yeah, it's a 1, 4, 6, 5 in D, instantly I know. Or all that from just 4 numbers and a key. Let's say you're playing with an artist and they decide, you know what, D's not really working for me. Let's go down a half step. Let's go to C sharp. Well, it's okay. We know the progression. 1, 4, 6, 5 in C sharp, because I know my triads, because I know my notes on the neck, because I know my intervals. I can instantly transcribe and change keys no matter where I am, what register I'm in. I can do it on the fly. Anyways, Nashville Number System, triads, notes on the fretboard. These are all really, really important things. Any questions?
I saw a question that's a little off topic, but I thought it was really cool. Somebody said, do you think you can start a music career without any type of social media?
Yes. Yeah, this is an interesting topic, the social media part of it, because nowadays I do think it's important. It depends on what you want to do. This goes back to the thing that we were saying earlier about having, like, what is your goal, right? If your goal is to go out and play and you want to tour, you want to be a hired gun player, you want to be on the road with an artist, or you want to get into doing session work, or you want to be a songwriter or a producer, having a network of people that you know is incredibly important, because that's where these connections come from. That's where gigs happen. Every gig, every opportunity I've ever had has come from, I know someone that knew someone, right? So I have friends, people that I've played with before, people that I might have gone to school with, who they know someone who's looking for a guitar player, and then they think of, oh, well, Rhett actually is available, or Rhett would be perfect for this. Do you have his number? No. Okay, then that's how all this stuff works. It's like that saying, it's all who you know. That's really it in this industry. Now, if you want to be a teacher, right? You want to teach full time. You want to have, 30, 40 students a week, then it's a little bit different, right? It's more of a business model. And for that, then yeah, you want to have some way of advertising your services. You want to have some kind of network, some kind of online following built that you can either get hired on with like a teaching studio, or you can run your own. Yeah, that's what you do, Chris. You teach students, right?
Yeah.
How have you built your student base?
Yeah, well, I started teaching at a store, like most people do. And then kind of the pandemic hit and I just transitioned to online, and I started, marketing a little bit on my Instagram, and slowly I've gotten, I don't have as many students as I used to, but I have like 10 or so, you know, that are exclusively mine outside of this music store.
Right.
And it took like, a long time to build that up. It wasn't quick, but it helps pay the bills,
Right.
And I really enjoy it. So.
Right. Yeah. So it all depends on what you want to do. Now, I will say it's important from my perspective, like doing the hired gun player thing for a while pre-pandemic when I was still doing that. I kind of still am, but the reality is like there's so few gigs at the moment, at least for what I've been doing. And I've kind of let a lot of that stuff go since doing YouTube. I haven't been up in Nashville like hustling for gigs or trying to find new people to play with. I've been focusing on the YouTube thing. And so as a result, the gigs that are coming back, there's like this new sort of wave of people that are coming back that I'm not a part of because I've been focusing on this. And I made a conscious decision to do that back in 2020. But I will say, when I was playing with Muddy Magnolias in 2018, we needed to find a new bass player and a new drummer. And the first thing that Jessie did, she asked around people that she trusted, musicians she trusted. The two musicians that were leaving recommended for a few people. She asked other people for recommendations. And the first thing that she would do is go look at their Instagram for a few things. Get a feel for their vibe, right? What do they look like? What do they sound like? Are there any videos of them playing? Do they have the right kind of feel that she's looking for, the right kind of sound? And then from there, she would pick a few, 4 or 5 people to come in and audition. So in some ways, having like a presence online, an Instagram or something with you playing so people can get an idea of what you sound like, I think is pretty important. Yeah. But that's not to say you have to go and get 20,000 followers on Instagram and like try and get endorsement deals and sponsors. I don't think that's necessary unless that's something that you want to do.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not necessary, but it's an asset, Yeah. Like it's only going to help you in the long run, I think.
I think so too. And again, like we're coming into a new age. I mean, it's been interesting in the 10 years that I've been doing this. I've seen such a shift in how people make a living with their instruments. Obviously there's still plenty of opportunities to play. Right, you can land a gig. You can. Session work is harder and harder to come by unless you're doing it yourself. You can teach, but now there's things like YouTube or TikTok even or Instagram that like if you want to put time into developing this platform to teach something, it's a whole new way to make a living that didn't exist 10 years ago when I got out of music school. If you'd have told me when I graduated AIM 10 years ago that like in 10 years you're gonna have a YouTube channel with 400-some thousand subscribers and that's going to be your full-time job, I would have been like, what? How is that even a thing that someone can do?
Well, and in the same way, like if you would have told me that I would be a production assistant and editing and helping you like with your studio build and all this stuff and getting paid for it, I would never have. That's not something that ever popped into my mind ever, like going through music school, Right.
But that's the thing though about this career path. And we'll get back into some practical stuff here in a second, but like it's for someone like me who struggled a lot growing up with school and struggled a lot sort of in the traditional education space, who just the sort of traditional path just wasn't for me. And I didn't know that growing up, and it caused a lot of issues and a lot of trauma. But like, for me, I thrive in this kind of environment where it's like anything can happen. You just have to kind of pick a path and work towards that thing every single day. That's where the whole no plan B thing comes from. I get people asking me, from time to time, like, what does that mean? It doesn't literally mean don't have a backup plan. For me, what it means is, and the reason I say it at the end of all my videos, is that it means whatever you decide to do, you should get up every day and work towards it, work at it as if you don't have anything else to fall back on. Take it with that kind of energy, that sort of consistency. Like, I've got to make this work or else. Even if, I do think it's smart to have like some other options in case things don't work out. That's not literally what I'm saying. But yeah, that's it. Let's see. I saw a question here. What advice do you have for someone who's part of a band that is not completely formed yet because of issues between members that come and go? Ooh, that's tricky. Bands are tricky things. Band situations where you have like equitable members, not necessarily like artist hired gun situation. That's a different dynamic than like a group of friends that come together to form a band. In many ways, it's like a marriage. It just is. You're in a long-term committed financial relationship with those other people, and there's a lot of issues and baggage that can come with that. So I guess I'd give you the same advice as if you asked me a marriage question, which is it's about communication, being upfront, clearly communicating expectations and ideas with everyone. Like, seriously, this, especially around money, the reason that most bands don't make it and most bands break up is because of money or creative input and creative rights. But if you're communicating that stuff effectively on the front end and everyone knows what the expectations are and everyone has had a chance to input their point of view and you come to a decision, then I think it can be successful. But if you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and just, because here's the thing, man, like, success can happen to anyone. Like, if you're good and you're committed and you're doing this stuff consistently, like, you can find success, and then you can find a situation where you're like the dog that caught the car, essentially, where you and your bandmates find yourself after a couple years of doing this where there's some real money flowing through and there's some real gigs. And then what if you guys haven't had the discussion about, well, who has writing credit on this song? Well, I wrote the guitar part. Does that mean I get an equal split? Well, no, I wrote the lyrics and the chord. Like, you have to have those discussions ahead of time. This is what we did with DEACON KNIGHT. Before we ever set up one of our first live streams, before we ever did anything, we had to sit down and we discussed, okay, here's where money is going to be coming in from. Here's how we're going to split it up. It's an equitable split. Every dollar that comes in is split once we recoup the costs of like running this thing. And so when the money came in from donations on the live streams, there was never any animosity with anyone because we all knew what we were getting into when we started. Quick plug, got a handful of coupons left, 50% off Nashville Number System course and Fretboard Fundamentals. If you want, you can get those now. If you're watching this on the replay, you can get 35% off of both of those courses through the end of the week. But yeah, once those 50% offs are gone, they are gone.
Here's a good question from Mad Mage. He says, what would you suggest as far as finding players for a band? I keep looking on Bandmix and Facebook, but most people are either not right or they're crazy.
Dude, honestly, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So going back to that Muddy Magnolias story earlier, when we are auditioning players in Nashville, Tennessee. And you would think, I thought that, we'll do a couple rounds of auditions and we'll find people. We'll find the right people instantly. But it was so hard. It was so hard to find someone that fit. And we ended up we did. We got Timmy Jones on drums, who's now Chris Tomlin's drummer, and Zachariah Witcher on bass, who's a very close friend of mine in Nashville. But yeah, we went through several weeks of like rehearsals and auditioning people to find those two guys. It can be really difficult. What I would say is the musical chemistry is important. And especially if you have a certain vision in your mind of what you're looking for out of a player, then yes, it's important to find the right person. But alongside the musical chemistry, the hang has got to be there. And this is the next thing I wanted to talk about the thing that pro players understand, especially the longer that they've been doing it, is yes, your musicality and your technical skill and all of these things are important, right? You have to be able to play. You've got to be, for whatever position or opportunity that you're looking to get, you've got to be good enough to get there. But the thing is, once you've gotten in, so to speak, once you've crossed that threshold, you've got the fundamentals down, you're a confident player, you've got a good ear. It's less about your technical skill as a player, and it's more about your personality. Are you the type of person that someone wants to spend days and weeks on end? Are you the type of person that someone wants to spend 15 hours or 16 hours in a van with? Not a tour bus, like a 15-passenger van for 2 weeks. This kind of stuff really matters. Being a good hang is literally the best thing you can do for your career, no matter what you're trying to do. If you're trying to be, a hired gun player and going out play, or you're trying to be a teacher, being a good hang to your students, making them feel comfortable and excited about learning, communicating effectively with the students' parents or whoever might be paying for the lessons, like that kind of stuff, that's where your longevity in your career comes from. It comes from being reliable, being a good communicator, being just being a good hang, really. Did that answer the question? I feel like I got on a soapbox there.
I think so, yeah. Well, I mean, also just, I probably wouldn't look exclusively on like Facebook or online for band members. I mean, I've found all my bands and all my musical experiences through going to different jam sessions and, just you meet one person at a jam session, they invite you to, their house for a session with some other people, and then they invite you here, and, it all spirals out from there.
Yeah, DK in the chat says, making bandmates is like making friends. Be around people you enjoy and that energize you. And yes, this brings up a point that somebody, I can't remember who told me this or where I heard it, but it's something that stuck with me, talking about gigs. A good gig, there's sort of 3 prongs to a gig: the money, the music, and the hang. Okay? A good gig will have 2 of the 3 things, right? It'll have, maybe the music is really good and the hang is really good, but there's not much money in it. Okay, well then that's cool. Take the gig because you're playing music that you really love with people that you're really vibing with. That's awesome. Or maybe the hang is there and the money is there, but the music's not really your thing. That's okay. Take the gig. You're going to get paid. You're going to have a good time hanging out with people that you really dig. And oh, by the way, keep in mind that all of your peers, everyone who's serious about this and who's a pro, they're all on their own career paths, okay? So if you've played with somebody for an extended amount of time and you've become friends with that person, and then maybe your gig ends, maybe you go your separate ways, if you're going to do this for 20, 30, 40 years, like the length of a career, your paths are going to intersect again. You're going to end up working with that person in some other way. And who knows, like they're going to have their own career path and their own aspirations and their own opportunities that they inevitably then will extend to you and bring back to you in some way in the future. So this is why the good hang thing is so important. Like making genuine friendships and relationships with people, not to leverage their position or to try and, to push yourself further, but being a genuine like friend and having a genuine musical and working relationship with these people is the best thing I think you can do. Matt Barnes, top chat. Thanks, man. In a mullet rock country cover band, looking at going ampless on stage, so need a good DI pedal for a bass. Got any good recommendations using a Fender P bass and a Fender Ultra Jazz 5-string? Yeah, Nobles. The Nobles DI is really, really good. A lot of my bass player friends in Nashville use that. If you're going to go with a tube DI, I really like the Zod. Where is it? The Zod Audio DI back there, that gray box sitting on my shelf. My friend Dan Derlot builds those. They sound amazing. If you're looking for more of like a modeler or like an amp in a box thing, I'd get an HX Stomp. get a Line 6 HX Stomp. They work incredibly well on bass. JHS Color Box is another really good option. But yeah, so.
This is an interesting question. Dr. Gabe, he says, Rhett, I have a band and I always play with them in my garage and we're really good. However, I want to play live so badly, but I have stage fright. Any advice?
Okay. Yes. First of all, be as prepared as you can be. If you're confident, you know the music, you know the set list inside and out, you guys are well rehearsed, that's going to eliminate half of the fear just right off the bat. Because you know that, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know the songs, I know the parts, I know what effects I'm going to kick on at what parts of the songs. Come prepared. The second thing is, when you're on stage, and this goes for everybody, remember to breathe. When you're on stage in front of people and you're playing, you'd be shocked at how most of us, and I still have to do this, I have to remind myself while I'm actually playing, like I'm like holding tension in my body. My shoulders are kind of up, my mouth is clenched, and I'm holding, and that comes through when you're playing, right? If you're tense and you're trying to play, it makes it so much harder to play musically and to play fluidly than if you just relax and breathe. And you have to remind yourself of that in the middle, like if you're playing a part or whatever, and then you step out for a verse and you stop playing, take a second, just okay, and get back into it. Kind of slow your heart rate down, breathe, and you would be shocked at what that does for someone with stage fright. The other part of it is too, man, you're not going to completely eliminate nerves before a show, and I don't think you should. I think instead you should learn how to harness those nerves and harness that energy and focus it towards the performance. And I can't answer that for you. I can't tell you exactly how to do that. You'll have to figure that out on your own. But all of my best gigs, the best shows I've ever had, have all been when I was a little bit scared, when I was a little bit nervous before going out on stage. And then we as a band kind of took that energy and put it into the show, and everyone plays their asses off. So stage fright is normal. It's part of the gig. And also understand that the more that you do it, the more repetitions that you get, the better it's going to be, the less nervous you're going to get. So yeah. Omar, Top Shot, thank you for the lessons through YouTube. Appreciate that, man. You got me to a point where I am now jamming by myself, and that's the more I could ask for. What would you say you would improve if I focus on intervals? That's a good point. So intervals, understanding your intervals on chords are going to do a couple of things for you. A, it's going to help you play more complex chords, right? It's going to help you. Let me get a little kind of a sound going here. If you start to understand where your intervals are in a chord, you can start to mess around with them and move them. All of these are just variations on C major. And I'm just experimenting with moving intervals and chord tones around. So it's going to give you a better understanding of the chords that you're playing and the chords that you're hearing on a record or on the radio, and how to actually get those chords out of your speakers, basically. Also understanding things like sixths, for example, or like this 10th voicing kind of thing here. Let's see. So knowing that, like, it also helps you identify chords that you might be playing. So you encounter that chord voicing in a song. Well, if you know your intervals and you know your notes on the fretboard, you'll know, oh, that's an A minor 11. So now I know anywhere I might encounter an A minor 11 or there, for example. That all comes from understanding your intervals. Let's see here. Any other good questions? Oh, only 4 coupons left for the Nashville Number System course. 50% off. And are the Fretboard Fundamentals all gone? I think they might be all gone. If they're not, there's just a handful left, so get those. Once those are gone, 35% off of both of those video courses through the end of the week. A minor 11, very nice chord. It is a nice chord. It also, understanding your intervals will also help you to play more interesting chord voicings. So for example, like, let's say like an E minor. So I can play E minor there, but I could also play it there, or there, or I'm just messing around with different E minor chord tones, trying to find different sounds. And you can do it by letting that low E drone out, so.
You could also use like all those 6 voicings from G major over E minor.
Right, because it's the relative major. So, yeah. Westseed asks, or Kyle asks, who does my eyebrows? Nobody.
All natural.
Maybe that's all natural. Maybe that's the problem, is that nobody's doing them. Aaron, thanks in the top chat, man. You said that although modelers have improved, they don't have the feel of a tube amp. If you turn off the impulse response and play through a real cab versus studio monitors, does that get you the feel back? That's a really good question. It does. So it does and it doesn't. So here's the thing. If you are used to playing a tube amp in a room, right? You're used to hearing your amplifier coming through its speaker in the room, and then you go and play a modeler, any modeler, doesn't matter what it is, through headphones or through speakers, it's going to sound jarring at first because you're not used to hearing your amp that way. You're used to sitting 6 to 8 feet away from your amp where the speaker's pointed in a different direction. You're hearing the speaker and the cabinet's interaction with the room that you're sitting in. There's a lot of variables at play. If you were to actually, and I definitely don't recommend this because you will damage your hearing, but if you were to actually put your ear in front of the speaker where a microphone would go, it's going to sound completely different than what you're used to hearing. Modelers are meant to imitate the sound of a mic'd amp in a studio situation, right? So for example, right now I'm playing the AxeFx 3. This is an AC20 Deluxe, a Morgan AC20 Deluxe, actually part of my AxeFx 3 profile pack. If you want, you can find that link down below. But essentially, I'll turn off the reverb and the delay here. This is imitating what a mic'd up amp will sound like. So it sounds present, it sounds focused, it sounds bright, but if I was sitting in the room with an actual AC20, it wouldn't sound like that. So you can get closer to a natural amp in a room sound by going through a speaker cabinet in the room. The other thing that studio monitors do that guitar speakers don't do is studio monitors are capable of producing frequencies way higher in the frequency spectrum than guitar speakers are. Most guitar speakers, generally speaking, top off at around 7, 8, 9 kilohertz in the frequency spectrum. Well, these HS7s here can go well above my range of hearing, 18, 19, 20K. You can look at a frequency response graph and find out exactly what they go to. But what happens is, with a modeler, if it's not set up right, or if the EQ's not quite right, or if it was a bad model or a bad preset, you might be hearing a lot more top end and a lot more brightness and air in the sound than the guitar amp is actually capable of producing on its own. That's why with all my presets, whether it's a Helix preset or AxeFx, one of the things I always do is low pass everything at like 8 or 9K, sometimes 10K, depending on if there's a reverb or where I'm doing the low passing. And that's to imitate what the speaker is actually doing, what a guitar speaker is doing, by not letting those ultra high frequencies come through. So there's some things you can do to get it to sound closer, but yeah.
We got a cool question from Jake Douglas Brooks. He says, how do you go about creating your acoustic arrangements with Noah when there are only 2 players?
Okay, that's a really good question. God, I wish Noah was here and we could play something. So when there's only 2 players, you have to shift how you think about your instrument and the role and the parts that you're playing. So I like to think about my role as a guitar player as occupying a specific space. If I'm playing in a band, let's say it's with Noah and we're playing full band, Noah Guthrie and Good Trouble. Well, I know that I need to occupy a smaller space because there's bass, there's drums, there's Noah's acoustic, there's my background vocal, Ian's background vocal, and Noah's vocal. Sometimes there's a keys player as well. So I know that the parts that I play in that situation, the tones that I pick in that situation, need to fit in a different space. Oftentimes, if you were to visualize it, I think of it like almost sort of riding on top of, if the rhythm section, Phil and Ian are providing a bed, my guitar parts sometimes are riding on top of the bed, and then I might fall back in and become part of the rhythm section, right? With like a... the song Hell or High Water, the rhythm part is... So right there, I'm thinking of myself more as part of the rhythm section. Whereas with a different song, for example, like Razor Blade, I'm just kind of playing on top of everything. But the point is, I'm taking up a narrower space. When it's just 2 acoustics and 1 vocal, or my background vocal and Noah's vocal, I need to take up more space, right? Because ideally, you still want an acoustic performance to sound full and big and have a lot of energy. And so what that means a lot of times is, instead of playing, a lot of high-end voicings up here, which I don't think particularly sound great on an acoustic, I'll play chord voicings either in the open position or around the 5th or 7th position, depending on what key we're in, that still take up a lot of space. Like these kind of sounds. In the key of E, for example, utilizing a lot of open strings. Those types of voicings, for example. I might capo up more often to be able to utilize open strings, but just occupying a wider space. With acoustic, I don't particularly play a lot of like single note lines. For example, because it just, sometimes on acoustic it can sound sort of thin and plinky and lame. But yeah, I'm thinking about where I'm sitting in the... thinking about that Bruce Dickinson, explore the space. Explore the studio space! It's like where I'm sitting in the space. So, yeah.
We had a donation. Joel Morris, thanks. He says, do you think you could play a rock/metal gig with no pedals or effects?
I have played a rock gig with no pedals in London. I made a video about it where TSA destroyed my pedal board on the way to London, and I plugged straight into an AC30, and it sounded awesome. I probably couldn't play a metal gig very well. I'm not a metal guitar player. I've not done a lot of practice in that tradition, and I've not done a lot of listening in that tradition. And this comes up to the other point that I wanted to talk about when it comes to being a pro guitar player is listening. Every pro musician, every musician that I've worked with and know, does a ton of listening to music and listening to stuff that is not based around their instrument. I don't listen to a ton of like guitar music, specifically like guitar instrumental music. I just don't listen to it that much. I listen to a lot of guitar-driven bands, sure, but most of my music listening pertains to what I'm interested in learning or what I want to hear more of. So I listen to a lot of singer-songwriters. I listen to a lot of stuff where I find the production value really interesting, where the guitar parts or the just arrangements in general are really interesting. And this is something that pros, all the best players that I know, the people that I really look up to, they have a very wide and vast musical diet, and they know stuff. And there's a few reasons for this. One is because we all love music and we can't get enough of listening to it. But two, as a pro player, especially if you want to be a session player or you want to play with artists specifically, you need to have sort of a wide lexicon of reference material to pull from, specifically in the genres that you are working in. For example, when I was playing with Jessie, when her solo record came out and we were touring in 2019, I know that like when she's referencing a Curtis Mayfield song, I know what she wants to hear on guitar because I know those records. I've listened to them. So as soon as she brings up Curtis Mayfield, right, then I think, okay, I know what she wants to hear. I can do that now. Let me change some sounds around. Let me change the guitar I'm playing or whatever, or change the part I'm playing. With Noah, for example, if Noah's referencing a Dawes song, for example, okay, I know what he wants to hear. And that comes from years and years of listening and exploring and finding new records. It also impacts your own playing. Learning those songs, transcribing the stuff off of those records is really what can help you become a more well-versed musician. It's going to help you when it comes time to coming up with when it comes time to come up with parts. If you have that reference material to pull from, you've heard that stuff, you've listened intently to that stuff, and you've learned it, then yeah, you can, we're working on, for the video course, the next video course, we're working on a Hendrix inspired track. There's going to be a bunch of backing tracks that come along with the rhythm guitar course that I'm producing and making here. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about was like a Hendrix style outlining chords and playing, lead sounds and doing like that first inversion kind of, right? So much of this. I have to play that a specific way or else I'm going to get demonetized in this live stream. But, and I know a lot of those moves and those tricks because I've listened to Jimi Hendrix for 20 years. And I've just, that stuff is just in my brain. Like I can hear it. I can hear Wind Cries Mary. I can hear Little Wing. I can hear all that stuff. And so as a guitar player and knowing what he's doing, I want to reference that. That's where it comes from. Listening, doing a ton of active listening, meaning like you're sitting there, not with your phone or in front of your computer or driving your car, but, actually sitting down with headphones on and just listening to a record. I don't do enough of that. I used to do a lot more of it, but, really trying to focus on the music, focus on the arrangement, focus on the production. What kind of sounds are they getting? How are they getting those sounds? Looking up interviews. A lot of the people that made those records and played on those records were interviewed and documented, and you can learn what they used to make those sounds. Going on YouTube. A big reason of why I do the What is the Sound series is because it's something that I'm interested in learning more about, and I just make a video about like, well, wait, where did the plexi sound start? Like, how did that happen? Or the tweed sound or whatever it is. Got a couple of top chats here. Let me see. they've gone by, and I don't have access to the.
Oh, I'll read them. Jen, he says, how do you balance your guitar EQ'd / desired tone with an HX Stomp with the sound tech's EQ when you can't hear what the sound tech is hearing?
So, yeah, that brings up an interesting point, which is like once your tone, once your sound leaves your speaker or it leaves the outputs on your modeler, it's out of your hands at that point. So, yeah, you can't control necessarily how you sound in the house when it comes to the front of house guy mixing you or making good choices. But you can focus on giving that engineer the best sound to start with, right? Get your stuff, everything that you have control over, get it sounding as good as you can, or as close to what you want to hear as you can. Once it's gone, once that tone has left the speaker of your cab, it's out of your hands, and it's at the mercy of the room. It's at the mercy of the sound engineer, and you can't really do anything about that. That's why a lot of bands and a lot of artists, when they can afford it, they tour with their own front of house engineer, someone that they trust and someone who knows their sound. And someone who's not going to like inadvertently put delay on the vocals in the middle of a song because they think it sounds cool. I can't tell you how many times that's happened where in the middle of like a slow song or a ballad or something, you just hear this bad digital delay on the vocal coming back through the house. And it's like, oh, please don't do it. If you're a sound engineer, if you're a front of house engineer, please don't do that.
Or the dreaded saxophone solo delay.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Fred Sistra, thanks for the donation. He says, Rhett, thank you for inspiring me.
Oh, appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Also, there are only 4 Nashville Number System coupons left, and all the Fretboard Fundamentals ones are gone.
There they go. So you can still get 35%, 34%. We picked the random percentage of 34.7% off.
It's a calculated decision.
Yeah, there's reason behind it.
Based on market value and inflation.
Yeah, my CPA recommended that we do 34%. I mean, look, I think that's kind of covered. I mean, we could really go deeper on what makes a pro musician, but the main point that I wanted to get across was that, you know, when I was in school and when I was first trying to figure out how to make a living with a guitar in my hand, I had this picture in my head of what I thought a pro player was. And what I pictured was basically a virtuoso, right? Someone that just was untouchable in their skill and their technique, and they knew all of the theory and they knew all the chords and had transcribed every solo ever, and like that's what it took to be a pro player. But the reality is it's not it. I mean, there are those people, and sure, they work and they do their thing. But what I learned was what those people do is not what I want to do in my career. Those aren't my goals, right? I'm not interested in doing that stuff. And that's not to take away from any of that. It's just we all have our own aspirations and our own path. And what I learned was it took years, and it is something I'm still working on, but being confident in my sound and what I want to hear, the type of gigs that I want to play, the type of music that I want to make, and really just focusing on that, being the best guitar player that I can be. And that means, I'm never going to sound like Aaron Marshall from Intervals or Plenty or any of these guys. That's just not my thing. I'm not that player. But, no one else can sound like you can, because no one else has had the life experiences that you've had. No one else has had the time spent learning the things and listening to the things that you have. No one's had the exact same level of influence from different musicians and players that you've had. You are your own, just like the best version of yourself. And so that's what I think you should focus on. Awesome. Any other questions here? One thing we didn't really talk about is gear and tone. And that is an important part of being a professional. There have been situations, I have known situations where there was one gig in particular where a guitar player was playing with someone and the sound just wasn't right, and they ended up not getting called back for the gig because their tone wasn't all there. It just wasn't right for the gig. It wasn't necessarily bad. It just wasn't right for the gig, what the artist was looking for. And especially if you're going to go out and play with artists or be in a band, but more realistically, if you're going to be a hired gun musician, understanding your rig and having a good sound is really important. That will get you hired. That will be part of what gets you called back. An artist, a singer, a vocalist, they're not necessarily going to know, unless they're a guitar player themselves, they're not going to know the difference between a Klon and a Tube Screamer, or do you have Alnico Blues in that cabinet, or Greenbacks, or is that a 6v6 bass amp, or is that 6L6s in there? Is that 40 watt? Like, they don't know, and oftentimes they don't necessarily care, but they know when it's right. A singer, a musician, Jessie, for example, like, she always knew when the sound was right. Same thing with Noah. He knows when the sound is right. And your job as a hired gun musician is to back up that artist on stage. You are there to have that artist's back. And part of that is giving them the confidence that they need to perform their music the best that they can. And so from my perspective, you know, when I'm coming into a situation playing with an artist like that, if I have to learn their music off of a record, I'm going to try and get the tones right. I'm going to try and make it sound like what's on their record as close as I can, because that's what they're used to hearing. And if I can help put them in a really confident headspace by what I'm doing and the sounds that I'm producing and the parts that I'm playing, then that's going to make everything better. It's going to make them sound better, which is going to make the band sound better. It's going to make the crowd happy. It's like the best thing you can do. So that's why I talk about tone and stuff all the time. It's really important. Having a good understanding of your rig and how to get different sounds and different approaches out of your rig, I think, is really important if you want to do this kind of thing for a living. Summer Brain, watching How to Be Advanced videos by Cyber Attack have made me a pro. I will tell you, so Cyber Attack, if you're not familiar with his channel, you should all go subscribe to his channel right now, Cyber Attack on YouTube. He does this series called How to Be Advanced, and he's my favorite guitar YouTuber. Ivan is my favorite guitar YouTuber. The sounds and the tones that he gets out of the gear, a lot of the pedals he talks about I have, and like the synesthesia, the video he did on the GFI synesthesia, my jaw was on the floor because I never would have thought to get those sounds out of that pedal. Everyone go follow Cyber Attack on YouTube.
Such like chaotic energy.
Dude, it's so good. It's so good. And his aesthetic, everything he makes is so just, it's a vibe, and he's a fantastic player. Ivan's a fantastic guitar player and arranger and producer. It's well worth a subscribe, a follow. And you're gonna, if you have any of the pedals that he's done the How to Be Advanced series on, it's going to re-inspire you to go play that pedal and dig into it. So don't Andrew Garfield us, Rhett. I do know that the New York show is sold out. So, but again, I don't know how I know that, and I can't disclose how I know that. You'll have to speak to my attorney.
Actually, I'm your new attorney.
Yeah. Actually, Chris is the special guest in New York.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. Truly, no one's gonna expect it.
No one's gonna expect it,
and everyone will be very confused.
Only 3 coupons left for the Nashville Number System course for 50% off. If you guys want to, grab that. Love how you changed the subject there. What are you talking about?
What subject?
I am selling gear on Reverb right now. I've had a couple of questions about it. So here's the deal. A very, very good guitar came up for sale around me, and it's one of those guitars that this sort of thing happens every few years. It happened with my Saris J with this guitar, where when you encounter it in the wild and it leaves an impression on you and you can't stop thinking about it, and it's like all you can think about for days and days on end, you should probably move on that guitar. So I found one. It's a 1965 SG Junior. I'm not going to tell anyone where it is. because I don't want someone to go
It's
buy
at, it's at Rick's NYC show.
Yeah, it's at the New York City show at Rick's live show. What's your reverb shop name? It is just what is my reverb shop name? I don't even know. I think it's called like Rhett's Gear Shop or something like that. I very rarely sell gear. I don't like selling gear if I don't absolutely have to. But Rhett's Gear Outlet is what it's called. So yeah, go up there if you're interested in anything. Make me an offer. I will gladly. I need to move some stuff, so make me an offer because I got to get my hands on this guitar.
Rhett, did you replace your blue chip pick?
Yes, actually, interestingly, so Blue Chip, the owner of Blue Chip, Mike, got in touch. He saw my Instagram post, and I talked to him on the phone for
like 45 minutes.
It was so cool. Chris was in the room working on editing a video while I was talking to him. So I learned a lot about Blue Chip, so these are expensive picks. They're about $35 a piece. I guess we can talk about how, like, this material that
I don't think it's like
it's not like secret or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so this material,
and we don't remember that many specifics. I mean,
I don't remember what it's called, but the material that he uses. So first of all, Blue Chip is a machine shop up in Tennessee, and I guess the quote unquote day gig is they machine parts out of this material for like very, very high end
microchip production.
They make parts for machines that make microchips, basically. So like crazy high tolerance nuts machining, and this is a material that they use to make parts out of. And he was saying that a sheet of this material, it's made by DuPont. I can't remember the name of it, but a sheet of it that is 10 inches by 10 inches and 3/4 of an inch thick is about $8,000. So if you think about that, then $35 for that seems about right. But this material has crazy, crazy properties. It doesn't burn. It doesn't melt. It's crazy. It's nuts. And so I like it because A, they don't wear out. The blue chip picks do not wear out. The pick I had that Penny broke, I had for 2.5 years, and it was like my primary pick for 2.5 years. I also really like the way they sound. Like guitar picks do have a sound. And I like the way they feel as the pick sort of pops off the string. And you don't lose grip on it. Like if you have sweaty hands like I do, they stay in grip. So look, if you're the type of person that doesn't lose guitar picks, if you lose guitar picks all the time, I would not recommend going and spending $35 on a pick. But if you can hold on to one, I do think it's worth it because it's never going to wear out. Like literally, they have to machine the bevels into it. And so as a result, they actually make left-handed picks, which I'd never heard of. But if you think about it, a left-handed pick, the bevel on the edge of the pick is on the other side. And because this material is so high wearing, they have to machine these picks. They don't mold them or anything because the material like doesn't melt. They have to machine them with a CNC. And they have to machine the bevels into the edge of the pick.
Because it's never going to wear out.
It doesn't wear out. I'm telling you, I had my other one for 2.5 years, and the tip was like it was brand new, basically.
I still have mine, by the way.
Yeah.
I haven't lost it yet.
You haven't lost it yet. Well, good. Don't. So yeah, that's the blue chip thing. $8,000. Basically, picture a sheet of notebook paper that's 3/4 of an inch thick, and that's $8,000 for this material. Oh, awesome. Well, all right, everyone. Largest crowd I've played in front of, 100,000 people in downtown Nashville on July 4th, 2019. It was nuts. It was a lot of fun, though. Cool. All right, everyone. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Tuesday Live. Appreciate y'all hanging out. And don't forget, I think we got 1 or 2 coupons left for Nashville Number System course. You can also get 35% off both of the courses through the end of the week. We've got merch. We've got all kinds of stuff happening. So thanks, everyone. We will see you guys next week on Tuesday Live.